All right, joining me now on the Matthew Filipowicz Show is Markos Moulitsas. Markos is, of course, a contributor to Countdown with Keith Olbermann, and he is, of course, the founder and publisher of the awesome website Daily Kos, which you can find at dailykos.com. Markos, thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Okay, so Markos, you recently caused a bit of a stir, honestly, when you announced who you thought was going to take the GOP presidential nominee. So for the listeners who may not know, who do you think the nominee is going to be and why?
Well, the caveat being that the field remained the way it is now, that Sarah Palin doesn't get in, and that Rick Perry, even though Rick Perry probably doesn't change my equation, I think it's going to be it's going to be Michele Bachmann, and I thought so for several months. Now it's getting to be an easier prediction to make because she is rising in all the polls in New Hampshire and Iowa. But it really came down to this. One is that people underestimate the sort of the level of influence that the Tea Party crowd has on the Republican Party right now. They think that it's some kind of passing fad, or that they're going to just swallow their pride and go with another John McCain type, which in this case, this year would be, or the cycle would be Mitt Romney. But if you, I really track the sort of online right very closely. And one of the big mantras right now is that no more McCains. Like, to them, John McCain was a huge mistake, and they're not going to make that mistake again. And that's really bad news for Mitt Romney. So you look at Mitt Romney, who's supposed to be the front runner in the GOP nomination contest, and he's sitting at about 35% in all the polls, but every Republican primary voter knows him, and he's only getting about a third of them. So there is no upside. There is nowhere for him to grow. People already know that they don't like him. The money Republicans may like him. That's probably where he's getting his 35%. Right? People who don't care about gays and abortion and things like that. But this is the Republican primary. So you have a huge chunk of those guys. They are going to vote for a true believer. That's what they're convinced they need. And Michele Bachmann really fits that mold better than anybody else. I mean, there's nobody in the field right now. I mean, Newt Gingrich is a joke. Mitt Romney has had every position, has reversed himself on literally every position, from the healthcare to abortion to gay rights to anything that matters to this crowd.
Vietnam, of all things.
Yeah, he's been on the other side of every single one. Without exception, it's actually quite hilarious how he's been on the wrong side of every issue.
And the right side, if you look at it this way. If he's been on both sides of each issue, actually. So
it means who's left? It's Michele Bachmann, right? So people are like, oh, she's just a House member. She's kind of a joke. Nobody knows her. She is one of the top fundraisers in the Republican Party, period. House, Senate, President, whatever. She can raise the big bucks. She's one of the biggest names in conservative circles. She's headlines, keynotes, all the big major right-wing conferences. She lives in Minnesota, which is right next door to Iowa. So it's sort of a regional base. She's going to do really well in caucuses. Caucuses, in 2008, 3% of Iowans came out and voted in those caucuses because they're a real time commitment. You had to come out on a Tuesday night, and you had to spend 6 hours, and you had to learn these arcane rules. It's a pain in the ass to participate in a caucus. So
it's not like a primary that's open all day. You have to be there for X amount of time and be there for the entire time for your vote to be cast.
Exactly, which is why the more well-organized and more grassrootsy candidate is always going to do better. This is why Obama won Iowa fairly easily, and that's why Howard Dean was going to do really well until he flamed out at the very end. But these are the sort of places where activists can have a real influence, right, in caucuses. So she's got Iowa. She's got that locked up. She's going to romp in Iowa. New Hampshire, it's Mitt Romney's backyard. Nobody expects anybody else to win New Hampshire except Mitt Romney. So it's one of those cases where either Mitt Romney does really dominate and he lives to move on to the next contest, or he does poorly by winning by very little. The latest polling has Michele Bachmann just within a single digits of Mitt Romney in New Hampshire, which is just unheard of, because New Hampshire's not the crazy Republicans, right? These are more your libertarian, get off my yard type of Republicans. And but even there, she's gaining some traction, and Mitt Romney isn't. So if she comes a solid second there, that's like winning. I mean,
I actually got to say, when I saw the headline of this, I was I laughed a little bit, and I'm like, yeah, sure. But then I read your post, and I read, following what is Romney's path to victory, considering so many of the states, their votes are going to be cut in half or not count at all. The actual path to victory for Romney is pretty daunting.
Yeah, so you look at the first 5 states, and amongst them you have Nevada, which is caucuses. Who's going to win those? Michele Bachmann. You have
Right.
South Carolina, which has Nikki Haley as the governor, who's literally like Michele Bachmann clone. I mean, she looks like Michele Bachmann. She sounds like Michele Bachmann. She's got the same political decisions as Michele Bachmann. I mean, this is not a state that's afraid of nominating and electing crazy right-wing women. So you look at these early states, and all I see is Bachmann wins, Bachmann wins, Bachmann wins, and that builds a kind of momentum. So now you can imagine that the establishment may mount a comeback, or a counterattack in the Super Tuesday states after those early states, and that's where things get tough for Bachmann. But she's going to be raising more money than God. Mitt Romney's going to be flailing. Nobody else is going to have any traction. So this is, I think, the reason why you hear so much about Rick Perry these days. I mean, this is the Republican establishment desperately looking for somebody that they consider in their pocket, serious in their way, right? Because Rick Perry's not a serious person at all. He's espoused secession. He's kind of a crazy Christianist type. But at least the establishment feels comfortable with him, and that's why they've really been pushing him hard. Because Newt Gingrich didn't get anywhere. Mitt Romney's not going to go anywhere. Tim Pawlenty might wake up from his nap to do something, to campaign.
Pawlenty seems to be throwing some punches lately, but I don't think it's enough to get him out of the doldrums.
It's kind of a joke. Not when he has Michele Bachmann really lighten it up. So right now. I mean, Sarah Palin gets in, that complicates matters.
Right.
She actually probably would win the nomination just by default, but she'd be, to me, Michele Bachmann and Sarah Palin, they're interchangeable. They're equally unelectable in the general election. Rick Perry does kind of, he does mix it up. But you know what? I don't think there's anything that Michele Bachmann wouldn't want more than to run a campaign where it's her against the establishment. I mean, right now, the right-wing teabagger base is convinced that the Republican establishment has sold them out. I'm not sure why they think that, but they're convinced. And actually, that would be a storyline that would play really well for Michele Bachmann. She'd raise tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in the primary. And so to me, it's hard for me to see how she loses. And even the latest bombshell revelations about her husband's work trying to convert gay people.
Yeah, that doesn't hurt her in the primary.
Yeah,
no, that actually helps her. They're like, really? Awesome.
Yeah, no, she can't. They're not going to think she's faking it for them. She's not. She's a true believer. She walks the walk.